Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Front Row Podcast here. And we want to thank Mary Mazzio. Is that how you say your last name?
Mazzio.
Mazzio. I thought
you know
so.
What? Close enough.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, Mary Mazzio and Arshay Cooper, the subject and the director of the new documentary, Most Beautiful Thing. Guys, thank you so much for being on the front row today.
Now he's the director. I love it.
No, Mary's the director.
Well, no, I was trying to do both. I was trying to do Mary's directing and Arshay's the subject.
Oh, okay.
Oh, man, words and language and stuff. Guys, thank you so much for being here and talking about this new film with us today.
Thrilled to be here. Thank you for having us, Jeremy.
Thank you. I'm excited.
All right. Well, I have to always, anybody who comes on the front row for the first time, we always ask the same cringe-inducing question. So get ready, everyone. Very simply, Mary, Arshay, what are your favorite movies?
Arshay, you want to take that first?
Yeah. I would have to say Remember the Titans.
Yes. What a great choice.
one of my all-time faves. Along with, and we named our company's named 50 Eggs Films after the old Paul Newman movie.
Yes, Cool Hand Luke. Yes, I thought that's what it was.
Yeah.
I have a friend. We went through the AFI's top 100 films in college, and so he introduced me to all those classics. And so right when I saw that production company, I was like, "I'll bet that's Cool Hand Luke." That's so fantastic. Great choices there, guys. And yeah, Remember the Titans, Arshay. I can't tell you how many times I tried to do Herman Boone's speech to Petey when he first meets him about, oh, you think football's fun? I just think that's one of the best scenes I've ever seen.
Zero fun, sir.
Zero fun, sir. God, Donald Faison, he's so great there. All right, great picks, guys. Thank you so much for doing that. That's just kind of our nice little icebreaker. But you guys did great. Most people are like, oh, no, I can't say one. So it's one of those things. But we are here today to talk about The Most Beautiful Thing. Just an absolutely wonderful film, guys. I got the pleasure of watching it last night. It is so moving, so uplifting in a time when we definitely need that. The film delves really deeply into various kinds of trauma, I feel. And, I do, in my day job, I work with a child abuse prevention charity. So I'm very, in the world of childhood trauma and just how that can affect everything, especially when that trauma happens at a young age. There's so many traumatic things that happen to the people in the families in this documentary. Mary, how hard was it for you to kind of balance all of those stories and to keep the viewer from being overwhelmed with the tragedy of the circumstances we're hearing that Arshay and the rest of these guys are overcoming?
Thank you for that question. And I think, honestly, it was my job to let the story unfold and to let Arshay, you called him a director, at the head of the program. And in fact, in many ways, it's really important that he speak his truth and his truth to power. And what does that mean? It means showcasing all of the impediments that citizens on the west side of Chicago face on a daily basis, right? Starting at age 0, which we are seeing play out right now, right? In current national debate. And yet, so important that you don't leave a viewer coming out of a theater like wanting to just be so depressed and overwhelmed and paralyzed. And so I think as a person who builds the scaffolding for stories really like Arshay's of underrepresented voices, I think it's really important that the message is and remains simple, right? And so that the viewer can say, oh, I love Arshay, I love Alvin, I love Malcolm. What can I do to help eradicate some of these impediments these young men face? Right? Impediments, by the way, which are un-American fundamentally. And so I think that is at the heart of sort of designing the architecture around something like this. Thank you for that comment, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And Arshay, what was it like for you to kind of just relive your life in this documentary setting and just kind of the process of being there and sitting down and talking about these things and the stuff you've gone through along with the crew team and everything that came from that?
I will say that, there's certain things that people will say in their lives that I never want to relive again. Mm-hmm. For some people it's a breakup, and for some people it's the way you grew up. And but those things have to be faced. I think one of the young girls said certain things have to be talked about in order to heal.
Right.
And so I think for all of us as a unit, myself and the guys, it just brings us closer, right? And it brings us closer to understanding the need of the world by hearing each other's story. We knew we had a story, but we didn't know so much of each other's story. And so that brought us just closer together. And again, it was exciting and fun to be on the water, to get to hang out and just be a part of the sport and relive things again. But at the same time, we learned a lot about each other. We learned a little bit more of what's going on in the world. And Mary just created an opportunity to capture burden, want to see our city change, and we want to do more. And so, so out of that whole thing, what came out of it is that like, we want to do more.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my favorite sections of the film is where you guys are trying to get back in shape to do the Chicago sprints again. And I just thought that was just so charming, especially because, I'm feeling a little out of shape myself at the moment. And so I'm just like seeing somebody do that.
Like the Tin Man.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'll tell you this, if our director wasn't a rower, we would not have worked that hard.
There you go, baby. So
again,
we were like, no, we only have to do this once. Just the way it works in rowing. We only have to do it once. We're the professionals. We know.
Right. Exactly. Well, and I mean, like, so which was like more complicated for you? Like just like the initial starting of it all the way back in high school, or like getting back into it all those years later?
I would say 20 years ago, it was more about just getting over the fear, right? And I think this time around is just like, kind of like, the challenge of just being old and being out of shape and just like, just like, oh my God, I hope we don't embarrass ourselves, And so, right. It's like you saw, it started off really rocky and shaky, just like it did 20 years ago when we first started. But bringing in the Olympic coach really kind of simplified things for us. It made it a lot easier for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's just a really, really fun section there. And it just gave me the drive that I want to try it now, So, in this movie, so many times this movie is dealing with a lot of big issues, Mary, that you talked about, and, sometimes we hear about big problems like, gang violence or drug addiction, income inequality. And it just seems like there's just such a divide that people who don't experience that just can't quite get over. And so, Mary, like, how important was it for you to make sure that you really did put a human face on these problems so that people would have to be confronted with this and would have to deal with it, even if they've never experienced it?
It's interesting. I think the beauty of film and music, right, is that it's an emotional, you can say things in an emotional way that a white paper, that a policy conference can't.
Right.
And I think when you watch Arshay, when you hear Arshay, when you hear Alvin and Malcolm and Pookie and Preston, you understand with razor sharp clarity the impediments and really profound inequality of safety that young people in what is the most prosperous industrialized nation in the world are living in. And I know it's not PC to say this, but living in third world substandard conditions.
Right.
And we as a society have been derelict and negligent in our obligation around these neighborhoods because we, the greater we, those of us in privilege, not only created those conditions, but have benefited in many ways, right, from those conditions, as we're hearing, with the events of the past 4 weeks. And so I think, you see a film like this and you meet Arshay and you meet these young men and you understand talent is everywhere. Mm-hmm. Work ethic is everywhere. Intelligence is everywhere. It's access and opportunity that aren't. And again, that's a fundamentally un-American proposition, right? And I think the starting line for young people and their parents, right, in neighborhoods like this, there is no starting line. And so I think you said it was, so you sort of put a face to the problem. I think that's when people can emotionally relate and say, as Arshay has said to me several times, it's so important for people who are not from these neighborhoods to just walk 10 minutes in my shoes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Arshay, along those lines too, literally the beginning of the film, there's a moment that I had to stop. I had to stop the movie because it was when you and your friends were talking about the first time you saw somebody die. And and almost always it was like I was 10, I was 11. And it's just like, that's something that, me here in Springfield, Illinois, like that I've never had to experience. And it's, it was just such an overwhelming moment there. I mean, just can you speak to that as well with like, how this could probably give people that sense of like walk a mile in these shoes for just an hour and a half here?
Yeah, I think, it was just so important for me and the guys to just be honest of what we saw, because, one of our producers said this line, I never forget it. He said, when there's a mass shooting, in some of these suburban schools, right away they send in trauma counselors, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we've seen this stuff almost every day and never talk to anyone about it. Right. We have to go to sleep with the sound of gunshots, right? We have to skip over pools of blood. And there's only one social worker in a school of 900. And, we see what most soldiers have seen in war, right? But at 12, 13, 14. Mm-hmm. And we carry those things. And it affects our lives as we get older, our relationships, the kids that we try to raise or we are raising. And I think it was important for the world to know the importance of mental health. Like, mental health crisis is not a mental health crisis, it's a health crisis. Mm-hmm. And the resources we need, right, to deal with these conditions, and the access of programs like Rowing and entrepreneurship and trauma counselors in order to face these things and talk about these things, and more opportunities for mentors, because from now until I don't know how long, we're still going to wake up with it on the west side of Chicago. Yep. So to act now, what can we do to bring them in until we figure out the systemic issue in Chicago?
Yeah, absolutely. We're at a time right now where so many of us feel so disconnected from other people and from each other, whether, the pandemic or circumstances or political partisanship or anything. There's a line in this film that stuck out to me so much. And Arshay, it was when Common was narrating all the reasons you guys were giving for going back to the Chicago Sprints. And it was one that, again, I had to stop it because it was so gorgeous to me. And you said, you can't move forward alone. And that just stuck out to me so much. And so would you say that it's fair that this film really captures how anything can be that common thread that can get people to see that we're so much more alike than we are different? Like for you, it was rowing and crew, but like, is it fair to say that that's like the metaphor that anything can be that can get us to get together?
Yes, and that's why I talked about my favorite film, Remember the Titans.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, to break through those walls of racism through the sport of football, and great coaches and mentors who say enough is enough, right? We have to move forward to send those ripples to folks that's not even involved, right? But see it. Right. To live the moment, right? Really move mountains. And so, yes, like, it's important in everything we do. We move together. I'm sure Mary heard this a million times. One of the biggest lessons I felt like I learned from rowing is that you can't do the work of 8 people, but you need 8 people to do the work, and you'll get there much faster. And I mean that in everything you do. If you work in the line at a restaurant, or if you're protesting in New York, when there's power in numbers and there's power in moving together. And I believe that.
And, to follow up on Arshay, because he's not going to brag about himself, but Arshay is extraordinary in terms of bridge building. And I think the other metaphor, to get in the boat, you have to have a dialogue, especially with people you don't agree with, people who have no understanding of who you are. And I think one of the most profound things that Arshay said to me is one of the reasons that he invited the Chicago Police Department to join them, to train for this race for 8 weeks and to join them on the water was, we have to have a dialogue. They need to know our names.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that, I mean, you can't set me up for my next question any better there, Mary. So yeah, that was also the section of the movie that just, again, was, I can't believe that like happened over a year ago, and that now how prescient that moment in that part of the film is. You know, we're right now in the middle of just this giant public reckoning in this country when it comes to race, how we view our history and how our police interact with our communities. And I have to say that it was just quite amazing, given the current climate, to see this section of the film where you guys bring those police officers to experience rowing in the same way that you did, and then to ultimately row together. Both of you, if you would, just like, how meaningful was this section of the film to do and to experience in real life? Because just to be the viewer on the outside, it was very, very beautiful.
I'm going to start because this was all Arshay. Again, it goes back to Arshay being the most extraordinary connector. And we had a series of interviews with Arshay, the guys, but also their mothers. And what they revealed so profoundly was trauma, intergenerational trauma, domestic white terrorism,
yep.
And toxicity with law enforcement. And Arshay called me up, I'll never forget, a couple days later, and he said, you know, I've been thinking about this, and what's not in the film, and this again goes to Arshay's character, is Arshay had been hauled down to the police station by a cop for really no reason at all. I can't remember if you mouthed off Arshay or not, but he was working as a barista, saw the cop 2 weeks later and said, "Officer, this latte is on me. I'm really a good kid." Fast forward 20 years, that officer is in Arshay's wedding. Arshay's playing poker with him. This is Arshay Cooper. And so when Arshay called me and told me his idea, A, it was genuine, right? And B, when we showed up for that first encounter, which by the way was #very awkward, I cried 3 times behind the camera. I could not believe what I was seeing. And I felt like we were miles away from this planet. That we were on planet Arshay in a galaxy far, far away where things could be different. And that will, so Arshay, I've just set you up for your, but what an amazing gesture by Arshay.
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, I had to, right? There's so many different movements, right? To try to get the message across. And I felt like a dialogue and a conversation is important. I thought it was important that we take them to the same water we started at, where we hated each other. You know what I mean? It didn't get along, but changed our lives. And I said, just maybe, you know, a dialogue can start here. And, you know, for me, I just want to say, like, if the whole world, right, disagreed, right, what I saw in the film that was awesome is that the moms agreed. Because, you know, the moms have a fear of losing their sons to gang violence. And the moms have a fear of losing their sons to the hands of police, the hands of police brutality. Those are 2 big fears that they have. And we were already connecting the gang members, right? And that was working. And we're trying to show how that works through access and opportunities and through dialogue. And I felt like I needed to have a conversation with the police officer. And what better way to do it than through sports? And, you know, teachers can forget some of their students. Not all, but some of their students. But students never forget a teacher. And to put them in we were the teachers, and to teach them how to row is something that I think they will never forget, right? And I got a call, you know, a text when George Floyd was killed, and that showed me when they seen his face, they seen our face. They remember the teacher, and I thought that was really important, and that was the goal, to bridge the water, to bridge the community through sports.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, it definitely worked. Worked on me. It was just again, just overwhelming things in this film. But Mary, I've worked on a few films and stuff, so I'm always fascinated by the process of editing and filmmaking and stuff. And this movie, it paces that human narrative with the athletic endeavor so well. I think there's just like every time that we're getting the heavy stuff, so to speak, and the real human drama, and then we're right back into okay, but now they're trying to row it out as well and everything. And I just thought that was a great thing. So was that a deliberate choice by you, to show that like the how rowing helped them cut through the hardships and provided that release, because it certainly does for the viewer?
Thank you for that. And, part of sort of constructing the architecture of things like that is the pacing.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, I have the attention span of a puppy. And so if I start to get bored with something, I know, whoop, cut, whoop, cut, whoop, cut.
Right.
And so I'm a firm believer in lots of music, right? Channeling my inner Spike Lee, right? Spike Lee, his work is full of big music, and for the same reason, right? That the music is an additional character. It tells an emotional story as you go along. And your point around not being so heavy, I think, again, this is the human condition that is playing out in this film in a variety of different ways. And the human condition also has, as Arshay has reminded me over and over again, it has joy, it has hope, it has optimism, it has tragedy, it has a profound unfairness, it has institutional impediment. But at the end of the day, it is about the human condition in all its forms.
Yeah, absolutely there. And, this is a movie about rowing, but it's about so much more. It's about overcoming and perseverance and resiliency. Arshay, you and your family and the other guys and their families, they went through so much to get to where you were and where you are. This film gives you such a great platform to speak to people who might be in the same spot. So like, what would you want to say to someone in maybe a similar situation that's having trouble getting to tomorrow or seeing past their current circumstances?
Yeah, to a young person, to a young man or a young girl in those communities, I would say find the courage and confidence to, number one, talk to someone, a teacher. But I think what I did was I kind of figured out what was missing in my life. And I didn't have a father, so I showed up to the coach house all the time. You know what I mean? Like, I found the coach, right? And the teacher. I didn't have, my brother was in gangs, and I knew I didn't want to do that. So I joined the team, right? And for some people, it may be chess or, it may be art, but join the team, right? And build a relationship, build a bond or a brotherhood or sisterhood through that team, even if it's not athletics. And, and there was no food. So I always kind of went to the church, the local church, the community center, hung out. And, and so, I would say, like, talk to the teacher, right? And ask about the resources in the neighborhood, and and join the team. And I think that's a start.
Yeah.
And to follow up on Arshay, if there's rowing, there's a trauma specialist who is writing a book with Oprah. And he said to me, the sport itself is exceptionally poised for healing because it's rhythmic, it's meditative. Arshay has talked before about not being triggered by a combat sport, right? So for young people in trauma, the sport of rowing is sort of, not only is it healing as are other rhythmic sports, but again, for the reasons that Arshay outlined, you are getting in a boat with people you may not know, you may have turf, neighborhood, whatever the differences are, but you cannot move forward unless you're together. And there's sort of a double beauty in all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've only got one more question for both of you here before we, talk about some, where else people can find you. But it might be a little bit of a walk here, but go with me. I've been, I'm a musical theater person at heart, and I've been obsessed with the musical Hamilton ever since it came out in 2015. And every time I listen to it, at the second to last song, there's a line that Alexander Hamilton says, which is, a legacy. What is a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you never get to see. And that just always just kills my heart a little bit, because it's just like, it's so true. You have to make these steps so that things can get better, but you might not ever get to see them get better. So as you are on the eve here of your release of this film and the stuff that you worked so hard to get out there, this might be a big question, so take all the time you need, but like, what do you hope the legacy of this film, of this story is? What do you hope carries on into the next generation, into the next person that sees it, that can carry it on to someone else? What would you hope the legacy of A Most Beautiful Thing is?
Arshay, you want to go first, or you want me to? Well, why don't I go first so that you can have the last word? How's that? I think there are two pieces. If this can inspire a young person, no matter where they are, they matter, right? Number two, I think that if those in power with the levers of change can see this film and walk 10 minutes in Arshay's shoes, and if there can be legislative change or otherwise around eradicating trauma in these under-resourced neighborhoods, what a huge win. And I think thirdly, we're seeing extraordinary philanthropy open up in the wake of this project already to support Arshay's work. And there's a Most Beautiful Thing Inclusion Fund that has launched to support a nationwide effort that Arshay is going to be right in the middle of, around making the sport and the lessons, right, much more accessible to young people in under-resourced neighborhoods, which is so exciting. And we are partnering with Comcast, NBC Universal for a greater platform for the message. And then Fila is going to be dropping A Most Beautiful Thing shoe with proceeds to benefit the Most Beautiful Thing Inclusion Fund. So wow. The work will continue, my friend, and over to Arshay.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the same couple things that Mary hit on. Number one, that young people in every public school or no matter where they are can and live a life that may be similar to mine or Malcolm or to Preston's, and they feel like they can't make it out. I think this story shows no matter how hard it is, there is a roadmap, that there is hope, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and don't lose heart. Don't lose heart. And I think for adults, I go back to one of my favorite lines of the film in a barbershop when Pooh said, when they tore down the YMCAs, I ran to the streets.
Ran to the streets.
And, to show, like Mary's a people of power, the power of access, right? To put resources back into these communities and give opportunities, right? And go to the places where people don't want to go. Those are the places that need it most, and to give their time, their talent, and treasure to make sure there's equity in our country.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that this film is going to go a long, long way in helping that dialogue and in supplementing what we're already seeing on the streets and in all of the cities across the United States right now. I'm truly hopeful personally that this is a moment where we can all change and we can all recognize the roles we've played and where we're at and move forward together. As you say, Arshay, we cannot move forward alone. So you two are so amazing human beings here. I want people to connect with you. Mary, where can people find you online if they want to know more about your work and what you're doing?
Well, we've got amostbeautifulthing.com for the film. I'm everywhere at Mary Mazzio on Twitter, on Insta, on Facebook. And then our larger site is 50eggs.com for the body of our work. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Arshay, where can people find you?
Yeah, Arshay Cooper on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, www.arshaycooper.com. And you can find my book, A Most Beautiful Thing, on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, or everywhere books are sold. And again, mostbeautifulthing.com. You can find me on that website as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the film is amazing. Find it, find it, find it. I'm going to keep screaming it until everybody I know has seen it. Guys, Mary, Arshay, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us some time.
Thank you
so much. Have a great day.
You too.
In the late 90s, the west side of Chicago was not a good place to grow up.
It was like a war zone. Some people asked what college you're going to go to when you grow up. In that neighborhood, the big question was what gang you're going to join.
A kid got shot in front of Mally.
Killed him dead right on the curb. It kind of makes you lose hope for your community.
How do you break out of that? But a chance encounter changed everything.
I walk inside the lunchroom and I see this boat.
I didn't even know what rowing was.
We don't even swim.
You gonna take some West Side kids over to the lake? Nah, that's not gonna work.
It brought guys from different neighborhoods, from rival gangs, together in one boat.
When it's calm and you out there, it take your mind away from any problems that you have.
It brightened my life.
There was something about the water that gave us peace, and we all needed that.
Now, 20 years later, they're back on the water.
What are we training for here?
Chicago Sprints.
We're trying to rewrite history here.
Training starts today, Arshay. Malcolm's doing this to show his son another way. Preston's going back in time to undo his mistakes. Alvin's racing to celebrate the fact he's still alive, that he's still here.
Now you get an opportunity to inspire another generation. What are you gonna do with it?
We on the mission now.
It's going to be a remarkable moment when they come together and get to that starting line again.
Brothers encouraging brothers. That needs to spread like wildfire through our communities.
What he's doing is a beautiful thing.
When that flag comes down, there's only one truth, that they are still here.
Manly, go!